Hi everybody. So this is my buddy Ken.
Hi.
And we're sitting in my kitchen. We just finished dinner and I told Ken how we've got some fingerprints on one of my Meinl gongs. And Ken is like, ooh.
We have some Meinl gong polish. So let's see what we can do to get this thing looking as close as we can to new. And so there's a few things that we can think about when we're looking at different types of cleaning that needs to happen, especially on our gongs. We have to pay the most attention if we have nickel silver or like an exotic metal that our gong's made from, because there may be some really special requirements about cleaning that. A lot of our bronze gong, our Chinese gongs can be cleaned a little easier. Often that can be soap, like a little bit of dish soap if we need to in water, even water itself. They're not as susceptible to potential damage, discoloration, other things that can happen with our slightly more finicky metals like the nickel silver.
And nickel silver being Meinl and Paiste are the two major players of nickel silver gongs.
That's right, that's right. So there's many different artisans and folks who are working with those kind of metals, so it's really great to know what you have. If you're not sure, always check with the manufacturer, or if it's an artisan maker, they'll be happy to tell you. Or kind of their own care instructions that they recommend for their gong.
Yeah, or if you don't know where you got the gong, call me, talk to me, and we'll figure it out.
And I don't necessarily recommend or unrecommend Meinl gong polish, but this is Meinl gong, so I hope they recommend Meinl gong polish for their Meinl gong. I have used this. I've had pretty good success with it. I consider this one of my lighter cleaners. There's other polishes, and I wouldn't recommend them without knowing what your gong is, but there are some that are specifically for mere finish. Those can be more aggressive and they can really change the coloration of your gong. But there's a few really key things to know with this polish. This stuff is pretty aggressive. I often will use rubber gloves or something and you'll smell it when you smell the polish, that it's pretty strong. And so this time I'm going to have pretty thick rags to protect my hands, but don't be afraid to use some rubber gloves when putting it on. A little goes a long way and you can't undo what you've just gotten done. So always start light and easy, like all forms of cleaning, and then get more aggressive as you need to. This stuff will change the color of your gong. Even if you're using it to clean, get discoloration off of the gong, it will usually always change it a little bit. But that might be better than the big fingerprint you have on it. Fingerprints are a little easier. This looks like maybe a hand that wasn't washed kind of got touched, so it had some extra oil that was left behind. You'll find dog sneezes, or maybe a bit of saliva shake a lot of times. People are like, I don't know, nothing's ever happened to this gong, it's been perfect. And then I've got a 80-pound retriever that maybe does a head shake and I don't know, and all of a sudden there's splatter marks all across the gong and it's starting to rust. And so those are the things you need to catch, and that's what the polish is really here to help. And when we do use polish, it takes off all of this stuff that's protecting it. So when it's coming from the factory, it's basically waxed, or there's another coating that's put on top that helps protect the gong. And so that's why I've got the Resonant wax. Again, not any official recommendation, but highly recommended by Facebook users of gongs everywhere. This one you'll find, it's pretty easy to get. You can get it on most large distributors. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what I'm going to prep on this polish. There's a few little handy tips and tricks. One, just reading the directions whatever polish you're using, and making sure you're kind of following best recommendations. This one is to shake well. When you shake well, put it in a rack, because I've done this before with a cap, shoots, and I've got polish everywhere. So that's just a nice little helpful tip as you get this prepped. This will, as I said, change the color of certain portions of your gong. If you were to use any portion on this brown section of this Meinl gong, it will take that coloration off. And so I've had gongs that really, I bought them used, it was a good deal, I was happy to clean it up, but the outside edge was also extremely dirty. I just left it because it wasn't starting to corrode, because if I did go after that, I would have just lost all of the coloration on the edge of that gong. And so that's something to also be very mindful of. Today, we have stuff that's pretty close to the edge, but still on top of the shoulder, and then this stuff towards the center. So I shouldn't be anywhere near that. I would also be worried about the polish removing these symbols. And so if you are cleaning dirt that is right on top of any graphic or symbol, it's to be known that if you have to get corrosion out, you will be losing. Like we detail in that. Oh. And you just have to be cognizant of, like, your gong does age, things change, and that's okay. But if you're protecting your gong and you're stopping corrosion from happening, that's much more important than maybe a bit of the symbol on it.
Exactly.
So.
And Theo has left the room because we're going to open up a smelly bottle.
Smelly
which
bottle.
You heard him at the beginning. Meow, meow. Yeah. He wanted up to see what we were doing.
Smelly bottle, not smelly cat.
No, no.
What are they feeding you? Ants. With this, again, I'm not going to go really heavy. In a place where I might have a lot of tarnish, I might very lightly put polish on and start to move it. But this really isn't too bad. This is pretty light. So I'm going to put just a little bit, and this is as per the instructions, putting on a clean cloth. Here I'm using like a very nice t-shirt rag.
Oh, you can show them how much? Like
so I use
teeniest little dot,
yeah,
maybe like an eighth
like
of a teaspoon.
That annoying small amount they tell you with like shampoo and conditioner, you don't actually believe, like a good pea-sized drop. That's what I'm starting with because these are pretty small. And so I'm even going to kind of dab that around the t-shirt a little bit so it's spread out and not too concentrated. And with this, it's a really based on time. How long this stays on the gong changes how much action it's going to put on that cleaning. And you always go with the lathing. And in this case, this isn't like a chow gong or a Chinese gong that's done on a big lathe and spun. You can see this is done by hand. Someone's scraping this gong, so I'm going to go with the lines of the scraping is the closest thing that I have. And so I'm going to go really quick and light. So you see it almost just looks like a haze. I'm not doing more than just that. And I'm going to wipe this off with a clean rag.
I'm so glad you're doing this because I would have thought to have like covered the whole gong.
And this
is, you can't see in the camera, it is, I mean, just the size of my fist.
And it is,
that is it.
Fast for which I get this off. Like I want this gone immediately and quickly because the longer it sits, the more I am changing that area. And if you go in a really small area, it actually can be sometimes a little easier to see, like if you do a really teeny spot treatment, but you kind of blend it a little bit over an area. And so you'll also see here I'm being careful when I'm toward the edge. I'm wiping away from that round area. And so now I can see there's actually, I think most of what was on the surface, kind of the wider area is gone, but I still have kind of the dot. There's like one area of kind of concentration there. And now that I polished it, I can actually see it has tarnished it a bit. Like it has already got a little bit of that corrosion on there.
And this is why I say to people, if you are, like to me, I would live with all the fingerprints. I actually had an old Paiste that was just covered and I didn't care. I embraced it. If you are a person who cannot handle marks on your gong, do not buy yourself nickel silver. This happened when a client was upstairs in the music room. I was downstairs. Despite that I had a little scarf on it, somebody just took their fingers and you could see the fingerprints up here and something there. So either you embrace it getting all marked up and worry about the tarnish coming off, or you're gonna be spending a lot of time polishing your gong and getting anxious because they mark up.
So there is a patina to it. It can be beautiful, but it is still the corrosion. You have to worry about the corrosion because that can start to change the surface and the protection of your gong and its longevity.
Yeah.
So now I know there's just this one little spot. So I'm going to kind of come here, a little dab will do ya, but like enough. I'm going to concentrate on that spot. I'm going to watch it as I'm going with those same scrape lines we talked about before. And I think what I'm going to be able to do is get enough of that corrosion out, but I'm not going to go too much to town to it because I think once we take this off, it's probably going to be as good as we can get for now. Sometimes once that corrosion sets in, it's really important to get these quickly because you can get some of the surface stuff off, but I would have to go much more aggressive, I think, to actually do much to that little teeny spot of corrosion. Now with that said, this looks aesthetically 95% better. Like the big area around it that was kind of smooshed and otherwise, but now that we've got all that away, we can see that there is that little teeny spot of corrosion. If I'm really trying to say that I can see a difference between that spot and what's around it, it's maybe a tidge slightly shinier, a little bit more silvery. Some of that will change when I put the packs back on.
I'll take a close-up picture afterwards and put it up on the screen.
But, you know, this is really going to be the best we do until we got really aggressive and we're going to change more of that coloration on the gong. I would prefer to keep the coloration of that area and live and know that I've probably stopped that corrosion for the most part. It looks pretty light. And then we'll hit it with wax to make sure.
So you don't think it's going to corrode anymore? It's just...
I would hope not. I think once we get it drying, we put wax on it, that might be our best remedy. I would still watch it. So if this were my gong, I'm playing it, I'm paying attention to that spot. Because one, if I was really worried enough that I'm taking this time to polish it and like being frustrated about it, I'm going to see that spot every time I look at this gong. But it's a good way to observe it and just see if anything changes with that.
And then if it does change a bit more, then we know we haven't caught all of it. And then it's not this corrosion, and then you're going to just clean it more and more until it's all the way done.
That's right.
Okay. In the meantime, if anybody would like to have a discounted Meinl gong, we now have a discounted gong because of that little spot on it.
Yeah. And so now I've still got some fingerprints up here. This one I really felt was going to be probably the easier, the two spots to really get at. So let me go ahead and see if I can get that quickly. This is going to be something I go really light on. Like this is one where we don't need much time. I'm much more about just making sure that little bit of oil that's on the surface is gone. I'm not so worried about getting in there. And
so again, maybe an eighth of a teaspoon.
maybe. By the time it's spread around, I mean, I can't see it on the rag. There's no white left there. There's just a little bit. And so here,
how much pressure are you doing when you're doing that?
A pretty good amount of pressure. Like this is enough. It's like, it's not full elbow grease, but I am pushing down.
Okay.
And that's just to make sure that I'm kind of getting in those etches, because once they scrape that, those are, you know, depressions in the surface. And now you'll also see, just like I was careful at this edge, I'm careful of that center. That center is what we call a near mirror finish. And so if I'm changing the coloration of that, it is way more visible than what we've got in this area that has a bit more scratches. And this one, I think I can say I can see the change in the coloration much more. So I can, at the angle I'm at, I can see how this is now much lighter in color.
Yeah, and you can kind of see here.
Mm-hmm. And so I kind of maybe blend that a little bit. And so I kind of come in. This is with my dry, clean rag without polish. And this is just kind of, if you're taking that area and just making it a little softer, like it's just like blending a bit with paint. And that might just be kind of the best I can do with that. And then there's some areas where I can still see a little bit of something of splatter from something else. So I can come in with like my already,
straight in there,
my rag that has just a little teeny bit still of polish. And these are just like really quick little hits to see if I can clean those up. Right here. And then right back at it with the dry rag, clean rag.
And you know, it doesn't smell that bad. Like where I'm sitting here, I was expecting this to smell like those heavy metal polishes that are like...
Oh, that's my mirror polish. That stuff is potent. And also wait for the wax. The wax is the worst, to be quite honest.
Okay.
And so...
If I may, just because you can't see it with this bright light that's on here, just right here. Yeah.
There you go. And so... Again, this looks...
Yes, so the fingerprints are gone. All that is this little teeny mark there. That is it. You are awesome.
You're welcome. And again, it looks different. And it does. And that's always going to be something you have to live with polish. There's not going to be much that's going to give you the original factory finish. If you want it all to look the same, you can do the whole gong. Like I said, with that, with a gong like this with symbols on it, you're going to be removing those. And so it's also taking a breath and releasing. You've done the best thing you can for the life of your gong. And so from there, the next thing I'll do, this one's a really pretty fast portion of the process. There's not like a lot of work with the wax, and it's super light. They say on this, apply sparingly with a soft cloth and buff gently. They are not lying about sparing. Ooh.
No, thank you.
And that was at least a couple dozen brain cells gone from that whiff. But I mean, we are talking.
Oh,
when I touch it,
it's like shoe polish.
It is. Yeah.
It probably is shoe polish.
Yeah,
Don't use shoe polish on your gun. And we ever do this again, we need to be opposite sides.
I know.
People at home watching, like your elbow, and like, don't hit me, don't hit me. But yeah, that reminds me of shoe polish.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I can see a little bit actually in the mirror still where I'm almost probably touched here. There's a little different color. So this is really light. Like I'm just dab, 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 and this is not something I need to put on with strength. This is something that is a buff, and so I just am doing really light touches, again with the lathing. And when I put the wax on, I don't want it to be so thick that it's like an even coat to start. That's the way the buffing is going to do for me. So I'm making sure there's enough wax in the area for me
so
then
no
when I
wax
buff.
got on that spot that we did.
And then I'm going to
but
push
that
right
was
over
easy.
it. And so now this is a dry part that I didn't directly apply wax to. And so now I'm going to kind of go in that radial pattern with the gong. And I am trying to get that even and blend it.
This reminds me of polishing my dad's shoes when we were kids, and we get so high on shoe polish fumes. I'm like, oh my God, Dad, can I polish your shoes?
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing that we were getting high on the shoe polish fumes.
And be careful who you ask to polish your gongs. You may have someone very well intentioned at home who's like, I wax and buff my car all the time. I've got all this stuff. I can do it. Let me just go ahead and. And when you do that, you can just completely change the gong.
We did that with when we got our very first Chinese gong. Like, this is way back. Like, we got a gong in, and it was so dirty and so stained. It had watermarks. So Ivan got out his buffer, because we do furniture. So we would use the buffer. And we got out the metal polish that you would clean your brass. It was Brasso. And oh my gosh, it was like, as soon as we went down that, it was like, oh, we have made such a big mistake.
And if you're a fluty player like me, when you polish stuff, it changes the friction surface that you're adhering to. So I'm very cautious of that, especially with chow gongs. Like, they have such deep ridges in a lot of the bronze stuff that if you get dirt in there, it can be way in. And so you have to polish, polish, polish. And if you're a drum player and you've ever cleaned cymbals, you know you can take that toning
that's what
off
we did.
The cymbal immediately.
That's what we did, because we just kept buffing and buffing and buffing, and it's like, that was years ago. We do not do that now. It's just water, dish soap and water. We're good. That's all you need.
And so I'm pretty happy with the results. I'm going to say I got everything out I wanted? No. But did I get enough out that I feel comfortable walking away from this gong and think it's safe for the time being?
And I think if we called Ivan in, he would not be able to tell where you polished. Like, there's so little on any of that discoloration. So really now the only thing on this gong is those two little marks, which, like I say, I may even just keep this gong for us and let it get marked up, as long as it doesn't, not tarnish, what was the word? Corrode. As long as it doesn't corrode, I'm fine with fingerprints, because it shows I have loved it. I have given it life. It's done its purpose. So yeah, maybe I'll just keep this for us. So good reason to keep one in the shop.
Today we used the Renaissance wax to finish, and it's a Meinl gong. So I really hope and pray Meinl would have recommended their own gong polish. There's many different things out there. Really research your own gong, and if you have a question, ask someone who knows. And if they don't know, ask someone then who will know, because you can change your favorite gong and never quite have it quite right back. So it's really great to take the time with it, be patient with it, but protect your gong. And like I said, if we stop this one from corroding and extended its life, that's all we intended to do.
We are wonderful. So on that note, thank you very much, my dear friend Ken.
Thanks for trusting me.
And thanks for joining us. And if you, like we said, if you don't know what kind of gong you have, reach out to me. I will happily help you. In the comments, I will have the name of these two. And like Ken says, there are so many products on the market. These are just the two that he happened to have. And this was the gong I happened to have. And he's like, oh, I'll fix your gong for you. So on that note, have a glorious day. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, good job.